thank you, Meg, for being our last guest at the first year of Spook Screen. We really appreciate you coming over.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so happy.
Have you been enjoying Clon?
Very much.
Of course, you're here to talk about They Live. So let's just start there. They Live was very much a film of its time. It was about Reagan and the cultural climate of the time. But it was also quite prescient. And I know you're not overly political, but what did you think of the messages that the film was conveying or the issues it was dealing with?
It was dealing with what was happening.
Yeah.
Because it was. I lived in Santa Monica at the time. And Reagan, told them to open the doors for people who should not have had the doors opened, and there were so many homeless people. Santa Monica also is an area where there's the beach that runs in the Pacific, and they were camped everywhere, bless their hearts. And City Hall in Santa Monica had a kitchen, and every other day, they put it right out in front of City Hall in Santa Monica. And so many people would come. And people that needed medication were not given medication, And it was just very horrible to see people that were taken away and living on the streets and didn't have their medication. So They Live is They Live.
It spoke to the times.
Yeah, totally of the times.
And you had a great kind of rapport with Roddy Piper as well.
Yes, I met. Yeah, I met Rod. I mean, when I read the script, it's one of the most profound things I think that I'd ever read. Only because I didn't know that Rod. But I just knew that what it was about and what John was saying, and I thought that it was so important and so brilliantly put together. And then John invited me to. It was just a visit, just a hello, how are you? Nice to meet you. To his home, and Rod was there. And I grew up in North Carolina in the early. I moved from Connecticut to North Carolina in the early 50s, and in North Carolina they had this incredible wrestling. It was Gorgeous George, but they were very big men, maybe not very much in shape, but they wore all leather and masks, and I would, watch it constantly, and I'd watch it, when I moved back to Connecticut as well. So I knew quite a bit about wrestling. And John and Roddy and I spoke, and Rod was sitting on a beanbag chair. They had beanbag chairs. And John said he was going to go get something. And from the kitchen. So Rod was staring out the window, and he was lost outside. Not lost, but just very focused. And I said, I'm just watching him, right? And all of a sudden out of his mouth came, I don't know. He's still looking out the window, right? Oh, I don't know. And I didn't want to be rude because I just met him, but I said, what, don't you know, Roddy? And he said, well, I don't know. This is the sweetest human being. And he said, I have 2 daughters. My first daughter, she's blonde. She's an angel. Now I have number 2, and I don't know. So he was such a wonderful, wonderful man.
And Keith David then completed the triumvirate in the film?
Keith David completed it so beautifully. Yeah. The 2 of them were so beautifully cast.
I'm a big fan of Keith David.
I am very much so too. He's an extraordinary man.
So, Evelyn then, let's just move to another role of yours. It became very kind of iconic. I read something where you talked about the relationship between Evelyn and Skeletor. You thought that there was an unrequited love there, a kind of a tension that were you playing that when you were watching the? Were you playing that sort of?
I love you.
In that film. Yeah.
You know.
She could do better.
What did?
You could do better.
Well, no, it's not about doing better. It's about getting what you want. But so I didn't. You're standing there with Frank Langella.
Amazing.
Do you know? And there was so many extraordinary costumes, and everybody had to remain in them, morning, noon, and night. I never sat. I stood or leaned. But Evelyn was many things, many things, and didn't plan anything. Just looked and worked with who I was working with. Do you know what I mean? It took its own little route.
Yeah, it took on its own life.
Yeah, it did.
Speaking to go away from genre for a bit, a very kind of special movie that you made in 1978, A Different Story.
Mm-hmm.
I know this is like a personal favorite of yours, of your work.
I had a great time. And it was an interesting time. Paul Aaron directed it, and Perry King. I don't know if any of you.
Albert in the film. Yeah,
He
was
pardon?
Albert in the film.
He was
yeah.
Albert in the film. You might not even have seen it. It's just Paul was a theater director, and he had never made a film. And so on the first day, when everybody was there right before, everybody was in the wardrobe, and right before we were going to do the first scene or the first shot of the film, and Paul stood there and he said, "Hi, I'm Paul Aaron. I don't know a thing about film. I'm a theater director. I need all your help, and I'm so glad that you're all here." And we all melted. But I loved the characters. And I also, personally, I have 3 sisters, and my mom, and what I thought of Stella, I wanted her to be a combination of every woman that I loved. Do you know? I wanted to be able to show every part, and I don't normally do this. I don't normally think that way.
Yeah.
But Paul was so sweet, and Perry was so sweet. And so I found myself, I haven't ever spoken about this story, I found myself, picking which sister I was, what did my sister, the sister, and it would come out of me, and I go, oh, that's great, I'd say in myself. So she was a combination of many women, and that are very close to me.
I think that's why it kind of resonates. It feels like a very real performance and rounded.
Well, I don't see. Yes, it felt rounded. I don't know about my performance. I know what I experienced, and I know the lovely people that I got to work with. I never really think about. I don't know how to think that way. It could happen, I suppose, but it was very intimate and very much fun and very honest. I felt,
But it dealt with issues as well at the time that were,
Yes.
it was daring.
Well, they were. It was. I don't know if you all. The story was Stella actually was gay and had a girlfriend, and Perry King was hiding out in a house that was for rent because he had just come from. He had just come into the country. I think he was. He came into the country with a pianist virtuoso, and that was his lover, and the lover kicked him out. And I was selling real estate, and I found him living in the house of the man, the pianist. And I said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "I'm staying here, But I took him home, and he did not know that Stella also had a girlfriend. So, and they became, Stella and Albert were very, very wonderful people. They were wonderful. And they ended up, having a child. And anyway, but it was all perfect. It's just a wonderful story.
And actually, another performance I know that's kind of dear to your heart, though, is The Scarlet Letter. How was working on that?
The Scarlet Letter
as Hester Prynne.
Yeah, it was wonderful. It was all done in Massachusetts or Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and it was for PBS, and as a child, I grew up in a small. Anyway, you had to read the classics, and Stella really is the first. First extraordinary woman, to accomplish what she accomplished and to, get through it. Being surrounded by the forest there was just everything, because we really were right in the middle of it and right by the water. And it was wonderful to work with John Hurd. And
the dearly missed John Hurd. The dearly missed John Hurd as well. I have to ask this question. I have to ask for Phil, actually, who you've met over this couple of days. There's a question I have to ask for Phil, who works on Spook Screen.
Yes.
Your performance in Pretty Little Liars, or working on that project.
Pretty Little Liars. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It was a whole lot of fun.
And how did you get involved with that?
I was cast. I went and met them, and they wanted me to work with them, and that was really nice.
You were a mysterious character, yeah.
Yeah, I liked her. There was a lot of things to do with her. There was a lot of ways to go, and a lot of they're a wonderful group of people in the first place. And they had accomplished so much, and the young women were extraordinary. The young actors, they were just lovely. But I had a very wonderful time doing it. I really did.
Well, you've done a lot of great TV shows as well, Quantum Leap, Twilight Zone. I'm going to ask you about a particular one, though, because of it. There's a slight Irish connection. In Star Trek Deep Space Nine, I talk with my hands a lot.
I love it. I love it. No.
I didn't mean Phil to be also rude. Says that.
I like it.
But no, you're in an episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and you play a muse that's based on a Celtic creature, actually, a Celtic folklore creature called An Lanan Sai, and it's influences people over the years, centuries. Keats is mentioned and Roman poets and stuff. But yes, your creature was based on a Celtic creature. But how was that working on Star Trek?
I liked working on Star Trek very much. I did come across Celt at all.
Well, yeah. That was the character was based on that, actually.
Onaya, how do you say her name? That's how they pronounced it.
Well, that's the thing. I think they mispronounced it.
Yes,
actually.
I think they did too.
It's Lanan She. It's also
beautiful.
A derivative of the Banshee. It's a similar, same family. So Star Trek was a good experience for you?
Yes.
Cool.
I'm
just going to throw this now to the audience for any questions. And John? Take the mic.
Huge fan of the Stepfather 2. I'll talk a little bit. Huge fan of the Stepfather 2.
Oh.
I said, what was the experience like working on that film? Was it a fond experience?
Yes, it was. Terry O'Quinn. You've probably seen some of his work. He's a lovely, lovely man, a wonderful musician, incredible voice and guitar player. And we had a very, very, very good time. When I think about it, I keep thinking about what we wore, or our hair, or something like that, because it was that, those years. But Terry was just wonderful. We had a wonderful time, and darling Jonathan, young Jonathan, Jonathan took his life, and yes, and he was so wonderful because he was right at the age. He'd worked all the time as an actor, and he was right at the age where he's coming into puberty, and when when the bad stuff started to happen and everything, he was so dear. He really was a son that was trying to take care of his mother. He was just wonderful, a lovely, lovely guy. But Terry did one of the funniest things when we were doing it. We'd just got married, and the cake was out on the table and everything, and so the director puts us on this wheel because he wants to do this spinning, shot, and so there's a wheel that they're turning, and the the camera's going around it, right, and we're standing still, so the camera's making the turn, making it look like we're turning, and we're standing like this, like this, trying to stay on to the spinning carb thing, and I have to like hold on to like his waist belt so that nobody will see, because otherwise he's going to fall backwards or I'm going to fall forwards. And Terry is grabbing me by the neck, and, and through his teeth he says, he's grabbing me, he's going, "We will never, ever tell our sons that we did this to put them through college." No, we won't. I mean, but we had a lot of fun. A lot of fun. We really did. I really liked the character. And they had done, a previous one.
Yeah.
There was a previous one which was really very
The
good.
two of them are fantastic.
Yeah,
They made a bad third one. With a completely unrelated cast. But the first two were fantastic, I thought, yeah.
Yeah.
It was good to each other.
It was fun, honey. It was really
Do we have
fun.
a
It was fun to wear a wedding dress.
Yeah.
Do you have another question up here? Yep.
Hello, Meg.
Hi.
Hi. One for the women. So, kind of a lot of the roles that you've taken are very gutsy.
I can't hear you, honey.
A lot of the roles you take are gutsy.
A lot of the roles that you've taken are very gutsy.
Oh.
And they're very strong.
Yes.
Which kind of, for that time period, would have been quite kind of out there. I mean, for now, it seems to be getting a little bit easier for people to accept that women are kind of able to do that. But what advice or what's your kind of opinion on today's society in terms of leading roles for film for women?
One more time, the last sentence.
What's your thoughts in terms of the film industry for women and in terms of the roles that they are now being given?
Oh, well, good gracious, women can do anything. We know that. So it's about time everything should happen. And I think that it has opened up, but believe me, I mean, it's so changed. I mean, I first worked, I think, on a film in 1968. And it's fascinating. It's very good that it's all opened up because it's so important. I mean, the women are very strong. Women are very strong. I'm highly strong, mostly physically. But insofar as, I don't think of any woman as tough. Do you know? So I really don't know. I mean, I think that what am I trying to say? I don't know. I don't even really think about it, but I do know that it was very difficult in certain ways. For instance, when I did Cagney and Lacey, which is a wonderful, wonderful series, and it was wonderful to be a part of it for a bit. And it was so essential. It was so essential that the world embraced it. Do you know? And it was so. I mean, Tyne and I went out because we believed in it, and anyway, and it was wonderful that Sharon took the part because they wanted Sharon originally. Do you know when they brought it back? But the thing is that when you need, it's a long haul. It's a long haul. I had to run in high heels, carrying a gun with a shoulder purse over my shoulders, and chase bad guys. And I said, what am I doing in high heels? Why do I have to wear? Well, because I said, it's crazy. Can't we wear the pants and the shoe if we're going to know? But it was like, but that's the time it was. Everything changes. But women, it's all okay. It's all getting better. Yes,
Yeah.
it's getting better. But I've never been told that I don't know, that I'm too tough, but I can be. So, who knows?
I'll take another question
here.
I was just wondering what John Carpenter was like as a director. Would he do lots of rehearsals or talk a lot about
He
the
was
character?
wonderful. We not necessarily tons of rehearsals. Do you know, Rod and Keith really had the bulk, which was wonderful. they were so fabulous. Oh, this is what I wanted to tell you.
Okay, this is a story. Yeah.
No, I know, but I want to tell you this before I forget because I don't tell this to everybody, and because it's really special, and maybe you've heard of it. But Rod told me, and because I got to see Roddy. I worked with Roddy again in Mexico, and but I got to see him at conventions and stuff and meet some of his children, and but what it was is that when Rod went in, went in to the bank, right? He was going to go into the bank. They were going to shoot the scene in the bank, and Rod said to me, he said, John just said, okay, Rod, because Roddy had never acted, but he was a natural. But you get a little nervous. He was a little nervous, and John said, okay, Rod, all right, they're ready for you, and you go in. You got your rifle. Go in the front door and say something. So Rod said, so I walked in the front door, and if you have seen it innumerable times as I have, he walks in the door and everybody in the bank goes, ah! And he's just standing there holding this gun, not necessarily in a very tough way. And he's looking around, and everybody goes, and they dive on the floor, and he's still just standing there with this calm face. And then he says, I came here to kick ass and chew bubble gum, and I'm all out of bubble gum. He ad-libbed that.
Oh, brilliant. That's really
Roddy ad-libbed that.
You did tell me that you wanted to tell a Roddy story, and I wasn't sure if I should ask. I was like,
Yes.
great. Do we have any other questions? Maybe last question from the floor?
Yeah.
So I know you touched on this, but it was Roddy Piper's first acting role.
Yes, sir. Yes.
It's fascinating because I love wrestling as well. But
Yes.
it was his first role, and he seemed to take to it like a duck to water. What was he like because you had worked for years and he had done nothing?
Yes.
So was it different working with a non-actor?
No, honey, no. It was a gift. I mean, I loved wrestling, and when we've all seen Roddy, we know what he brings forth from people and to people. He made Hulk Hogan, The whole world adored him, and he was to be adored. He was a very special man. I don't know. It's no, I didn't. I know. I went to work, and John said he wanted me to do the job, and I was very happy, and made me look very nice, and I wore. But I didn't. I was just happy to meet Roddy. It was very easy being with him, and it was really good because he really is just a centered, kind person. When we went to hit the bottle, and I had to hit the bottle, and it was made of sugar. The bottle was made of sugar, and so I was supposed to clonk him, and I went to clonk him, and it didn't break on his head, and it made this horrible sound, and I said, John, and Roddy said, hit me. I said, I was afraid now, hit me, and when I finally did it, I was like, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it, because it took so much strength to break this bottle. It felt like it was real glass, I thought I was going to hurt him. But when the stuntman went to do the fall, I pushed too hard, and it was a big drop, and he almost went scooting right off the mat down the hill. But, yeah. But Roddy, well, Roddy. I mean, it was, I think that They Live is such a special film. He wears a gold wedding band, It tells you about the homeless. You know what's happening. You see people, trying to take care of themselves, and they can't. Keith David has come and left his whole family in Michigan. And, here come the eyeglasses. Here comes this girl whatever. And there was something about it that was incredibly innocent. But it really says so much about how the world works, because it's working that way now, They live. They always have. But Rod, yeah.
a natural performer.
He was. Very dear man. Very, very dear man. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you
us.
so much.
Um,
Thank you.